Yeah. Those your rays. Let's go. Yo, tell me, do you wanna ride tonight? Then tell me, do you wanna die tonight? This is my city, my invite. Let's burn it up and watch the sky ignite. It won't hurt just to try it right. Yeah, maybe you right, it might. Downtown where the crime is right, the time is right to bust this dynamite. Oh, you come, the harder you fall. So come harder, don't come at all. I leave you, so I'll leave you all, leave you in pieces 3 feet tall. Let's go, we can have it all. Yeah, baby, we can have it all. Ain't it fun when the blood starts flowing and the parts start flying and your heart starts going? Come with it, bitch, come with it, bitch. Take your best shot and try to finish it. Don't blow it, cause I will kill you before you know it. Come with it, bitch, come with it, bitch. Take your best shot and try to finish it. Don't blow it, cause I will kill you before you know it. Where you gonna go, where you gonna turn? When you gonna break, when you gonna learn?
How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another Borderlands 4 build video. This one being on Bloodsucker Vex, being my Generalist Vex build. This is a build that focuses heavily on nothing, which is to say that this is a build where the aim is to be able to just slot any gun that you want to use into it. The focus is on being able to use anything and everything, so if there's a specific gun you want to use, you can slap it on here and probably do some work with it. This is a build that just kind of lets you experiment around with different guns, lets you pick up and play things, and while not having that focus does mean that it is a little bit weaker than those builds that do focus in on specific guns, it easily makes up for it in that fact that it's just able to use anything very effectively. Now that being said, this is a build that is actually going to scale incredibly hard with future level cap increases. And if you want to immediately keep up with any and all updates to this build, there will be a full write-up over on Mobalytics, where I'll have a link to down in the description below. But with that all being said, let's get on into things here. And coming into our green tree, this is where almost every single one of our points are. Starting out here, we grab Grave Sights, being a kill steal that grants Vex, critical hit damage, and gun handling. This is 15% per stack, up to a max of 3 stacks, being 45% crit damage and gun handling at max. In this tier, we also grab Leeching Attunement, being an attunement steal where while Vex is attuned to kinetic, she gains lifesteal and increased reload speed. In tier 2, we grab Grave Implements, being another stacking kill steal, this one being 20% gun damage per stack up to 3 for 60%, and then we dump 5 points into target pressions, giving Vex 15% critical hit chance with her guns. In our middle branch, we put 5 points into Drink Full. This gives us a stacking 0.6% fire rate increase each time we deal gun damage, stacking up to 50 times for a total of 30% fire rate. And then finally in this branch, 5 points into Mortal Terror, giving us a 5% chance to activate our kill steals when critically hitting an enemy. This is an incredibly important skill for this setup, letting us get our kill steals going faster, keeping them stacked more consistently, and letting us boss without having to worry about first killing arena enemies. Instead, just letting us stack our kill steals by shooting directly at the boss. Now, I'll move back up to talk about this 1 point into Grave Power. Grave Power gives Vex's kill steals an additional stack. This means that this 1 point is effectively giving us another 20% gun damage and another 15% crit damage, making Grave Sights a total of 60% crit damage at max, and Grave Implements 80% gun damage at max stacks. This is an incredibly valuable skill, and it might be a little bit confusing as to why I only put 1 point into here. Well, unfortunately, the way that kill steals work is that each stack is on a separate timer. This means that when you get your first stack, that timer starts ticking down, and say you get your second stack 5 seconds later, that first stack is going to fall off 5 seconds later. So if you max this out at 6 stacks, it's actually pretty rare to see yourself sitting at those max 6 stacks in a majority of situations. Especially since our goal is to be able to use any gun we want, there's not really any need to put more than 1 or 2 points into here, because most guns just cannot consistently keep you at 6 out of 6 stacks. I find that sitting at 4 out of 4 stacks is significantly more common. However, if you did want to put 2 points in here, you definitely could. Getting up to 5 stacks also isn't too difficult with a majority of guns. I just find 4 is the most consistent, and to absolutely min-max the setup, I only stuck with the 1 point in here. Now coming to our right branch, we grab Ars Arcana, giving us 45% still damage. I'll come back to the still in just a moment. 3 out of 3 into a deeper grave, giving our kill steals increased duration. At base, our kill steals are 10 seconds. This is a 24% increase, giving us an additional 2.4 seconds. As I mentioned, kill steals fall off on separate timers. This is an incredibly good still, as it just lets us stay topped up on our stacks way more consistently. 5 out of 5 into Essence Leech, giving us 10% lifesteal, though doubling that when our action still is active. And finally, Blood is Power, giving Vex bonus kinetic damage based on her current lifesteal while her health is full. This bonus kinetic damage is 300% of her lifesteal. Between Essence Leech and Leeching Attunement, we have a total of 30% lifesteal, meaning that this skill is giving us 90 90% bonus kinetic damage. This is almost doubling our damage, and it benefits from Ars Arcana because it gets still damage, meaning that this 45% still damage is also feeding into that 90% bonus damage to buff it up even further. The combination of Blood is Power and these kill stills is kind of what just lets us have a very good damage formula that's kind of just able to use whatever the hell you want. We get general damage from stacking up these kill stills, and that damage then gets almost doubled through Blood is Power. Along with that, we have some other nice stats like Fire Rate, and it all comes together to just make anything work. Now, the final point in our green tree is up in Guns and Needles. Our rep kit is pretty important to this build, as we'll get to in the gear section, and this just helps us to be able to spam it. You really only need the 1 point into here, since we are able to kind of just spam out our kill stills through Mortal Terror, so that 1 point does go a long way. Now, our final point is over in our red tree in Grave Sustenance. Being similar to Guns and Needles, there's another kill still, though instead of restoring rep kit cooldown, this one refunds some of our action still duration. Again, because of Mortal Terror, this 1 point can go quite a long way. However, honestly, this isn't super necessary, and it could realistically go anywhere. I'll quickly go over our action still and augments. Of course, we're using Incarnate here. Due to Essence Leech doubling while we have an action still active, we want an active action still that has some pretty good uptime on it, and Incarnate is exactly that. For our augments, for mobbing, we use Grave Harvest, making enemies drop a soul orb on death. While you can detonate these orbs to deal damage to enemies, the major reason we take Grave Harvest is to be able to pick them up, as they restore health and action still duration. In pretty much any mobbing area, picking up Grave Harvest orbs is going to give you 100% action still uptime. For bossing, however, we use Witchy Trigger Finger. This gives us some more gun damage whenever we deal damage with Eldritch Blast, being 15% per stack, stacking up to 3 times, though the major reason that this is good is because when you deal that damage with Eldritch Blast, it fully refills the magazine of Vex's current gun. This lets us kill bosses quicker because we don't need to worry about reloading, and can also be intensely abused with things like the Chaosin to just stack a bunch of stickies onto a single enemy. And the capstone that we take is Vibe Check. This makes Eldritch Blast a charge still, and when activating Eldritch Blast, it will consume all those charges to ricochet when it hits an enemy. However, the big reason we take this is because Eldritch Blast cooldown reduction from gun damage is doubled. This lets us very effectively use Witchy Trigger Finger to completely avoid reloading, even with guns at higher fire rates, which is incredibly important considering we have Drink Full and other fire rate bonuses from some of our gear. So the more that we can spam out Eldritch Blast, the better. Coming to our specializations, and starting out here with Now with Caffeine. This is incredibly good, especially with Guns and Needles, as the more we can spam our rep kit, the quicker we can get back into our action still. Now with Caffeine is a little bit unique in how it actually does action still cooldown reduction, being that it straight up refunds 25% of your cooldown. This means activating the triple bypass all 3 times, for example, refunds 75% of your cooldown instantly. This specialization pretty much gives us 100% action still uptime, letting us jump right back into it when it falls off. We also take Bullet Train, letting us run and gun, but also giving us increased gun damage the faster that we move. While currently I don't have the points to pick up any movement speed in my trees, we do get some movement speed from our gear, as you'll see shortly. The best defense, giving us increased damage dealt based on the fullness of our shield, scaling up to 30% while full, given that we have a lot of lifesteal applying to our shields and overshield. This is effectively just a free 30% damage buff, and riddle you this, giving us 1% stacking gun damage up to 50% each time we deal gun damage. This is also effectively just a free 50% damage buff, being how easy this is to stack. Now coming on over to our gear, we'll start out here with our class mod, where I use the Teen Witch. This class mod makes it so that when Vex is at max HP, her lifesteal begins to partially apply to her shields. When Vex has max shield, her lifesteal partially grants overshield. Now this is incredibly good, not only just because it makes our lifesteal even more valuable, and therefore makes us even more tanky, but we utilize this class mod along with the Watts for Dinner, which grants 25% bonus shock damage while overshield is active, along with this one specifically having an amp damage roll on it, meaning that between these 2 items, we can pretty much perpetually have another 25% bonus shock damage, giving us more damage and even more elemental coverage, but also this kind of ends up acting like a pseudo B shield, where we are just perpetually spamming out amp damage shots on even high fire rate weapons. As you'll see within a lot of the clips, I'm using full auto guns, and because we have our lifesteal applying to our shields, we're able to effectively use amp damage even with higher fire rate weaponry, and this is incredibly good because amp damage is one of the few sources of multiplicative damage that we have access to within Borderlands 4. So this is a 100% damage multiplier that we just get to spam out there. Now, I do not think that this is a perfect roll. I know that amp damage can roll up to 150%. However, I've not yet seen if it can roll 150% on the watts. Coming back to our class mod real quick, though, to talk about our skills and passives. I've got still damage on mine, which is very good, as again, it applies to Blood is Power, as well as Lifesteal. However, I don't actually know if the Lifesteal from this applies to Blood is Power. It does seem like Lifesteal from gear might be treated differently, because what I do know is the 30% on Rep Kit does not apply to Blood is Power, and I have not yet gotten around to testing other sources of gear, so this might be a good roll, might not be. Now, for our skill rolls, pretty much every skill is very good for our setup. However, there's one in particular that we really want 5 out of 5 in. I do not yet have it, but that is Grave Thirst. This is a kill steal giving Vex and our minions lifesteal. This is 1.5% per stack up to 3 stacks, which at 5 out of 5 is 7.5% per stack. However, of course, being a kill steal, we get another stack this through Grave Power, which means that we actually end up with a total of 30% lifesteal from this one skill. Which, as you might remember, between the 2 lifesteal stills we have in Green Tree, Leeching Attunement, and Essence Leech, those also are 30%. So if you get 5 out of 5 Grave Thirst on your class mod, this is more than doubling our Blood is Power damage, making Blood is Power deal 180% bonus kinetic damage on top of our damage. So yeah, 5 out of 5 Grave Thirst is definitely what you're looking for. Wherever those other 2 points go does not really matter. Now for our Rep Kit, we're using the Triple Bypass, giving us 3 charges with a 30% chance on kill to replenish a charge. Between that effect and Guns and Needles, we are able to spam the shit out of our Rep Kit, which means we can both activate the passive and through Now with Caffeine, refresh our action still, giving us pretty much 100% action still uptime because even when we fall out of it, we can still jump right back into it. I'd recommend either Speed, giving you 40% movement speed, which can feed into Bullet Train, Enrage, which gives you 30% damage while making you take a little bit more damage, or Fire Rate, which gives you 30% more fire rate. The other option for our Rep Kit is the War Paint if you want something that's a little bit more offensive, which as a base already grants you 30% fire rate and 30% move speed. Unfortunately, I don't have one with any of those passives, but I would recommend these same passives on this as I did the Triple Bypass. For our Ordnance, honestly the best in slot is probably just the Penetrator Knife, giving 100% crit chance on anything that is hit by it. However, I don't personally enjoy using this. I know a lot of people think it's a little bit cheesy, so we're just gonna ignore this one. If you do want to use the Penetrator Knife, you can actually just completely forego the 5 points in target prescience, which does give you 5 more points to play with, but again, I know not everyone is going to want to do that, myself included. Instead, I'd say the best in slot is probably the Shokunai. Again, because we're using Bullet Train, this lets us stack up to 70% movement speed, which gives us even more damage. Worth noting with the Shokunai, you can actually stack it on interactable objects like ammo crates, meaning that you can pre-stack that movement speed before entering a boss fight. As for other ordnance options, you could kind of just use whatever. I mean, we don't really have any ordnance damage, so you're not going to be doing anything too crazy, so it is better to use this as some sort of utility slot, but personally I have found some fun using the Jelly, and having some utility being able to pretty effectively knock off the crystals from vile enemies, as well as the Bottled Lightning just being an incredibly high damage option with a very large AoE, being able to take care of groups of enemies even with very little investment into ordnance. Now for enhancement, you definitely just want to use whatever matches the guns that you're using in the moment, which does mean that if you plan to use a lot of different gun types, you definitely are going to want to carry around a lot of different enhancements. I find myself using a lot of Vladoff, so I really like Bullet Hose, giving Vladoffs a 30% chance to add an extra projectile. However, the Jacobs enhancements can also be really good, especially Piercer, giving Jacobs guns a 20% chance to crit. But again, there's really no set enhancement for this build. You're going to just want to match whatever guns you're using. For the passives you want to go for, Fire Rate is incredibly nice. However, keep in mind with enhancements, generic gun damage as seen on this one, and weapon type damage like SMG damage or sniper damage, those are actually multiplicative damage bonuses with all of our other damage and can be incredibly impactful rolls to get on your enhancement. Now I'm going to talk about guns very briefly, as the entire point of this build is that you can use anything. And yeah, you definitely can. So I'll go over a couple of my personal favorites. However, if you want even more depth or an even larger list, I definitely recommend checking out the Mobalytics write-up. But for mobbing, I really enjoy the Star Helix. The fire rate buffs that we have make this feel incredibly good. And having those 3 projectiles, the amp applies to all 3 of them, letting the Star Helix just absolutely shred. The Whiskey Foxtrot I've been really enjoying. I just got this one recently. Another just DPS machine. Convergence is incredibly fun, being both really good for mobbing, but but also actually having some very serious bossing potential, especially now that it got that buff that it probably didn't need. GMR is a fun one, the Bully, Bonnie and Clyde is a huge personal favorite, and more recently I've been playing with the Linebacker, just kind of being a flacker type gun. Well, generally, you do want to stick with kinetic guns because of leeching attunement. Elemental guns are still worth using because elemental modifiers are multiplicative, meaning that they're very, very impactful on our damage formula. Especially for bossing, it can be very impactful to element match. And some great options for bossing is the Wombo combos, and some great bossing options is the Wombo combo, letting you just absolutely lay into a boss. The Complex Root, of course, very good for bosses that have very large hitboxes. And I can't not mention the Chaosin. This thing is just an absolute beast with which you trigger finger, letting you spam an obscene amount of stickies into a single boss. The firmware that I usually use is just 3 out of 3 into Deadeye and then 2 out of 3 into Trickshot. Deadeye gives us 30% accuracy, 25% crit damage, and giving us 50% crit damage each time we hit a crit, stacking up to 5 times. Trickshot, we get 5% reload speed and 10% crit damage. I take these firmware simply because it's kind of just the highest raw damage that we can get out of our firmware. However, these are definitely not the only options. Bullets to Spare, Dadio, Godkiller, Heating Up, and Ostermite can all be pretty damn solid for this build. It just kind of depends on what kind of weaponry you feel like using. But 3 Deadeye, 2 Trickshot is just the most widely applicable. But yeah, that's gonna about do it for Bloodsucker Vex. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all that. I'm so sorry if my voice sounded like absolute shit in this. I am a little bit sick. But if you potentially want some more of my shit-ass sick voice, I will be live right here on YouTube and also over my Twitch channel right after this video goes up, where there will be a link to down in the description below, and just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.